Greetings everyone, and welcome to a special online event today. It's called What to Do When Your Pet is Nearing the End. Understanding the stages of transition to calm your mind and make better decisions for your pet. My name is Stephen Dinan, and I am the founder of the Shift Network. And I'm really excited to explore today because we've been on a journey for some years now of really understanding, relating to our animals as fellow souls on a journey of growth, transformation, and healing. We've opened a whole animal communication area for the company. And today we're going to get to explore a deeper spiritual understanding of what happens at the end stage of a pet and a pet's life. And how do you sort of work with that process in a way that is healing for the animal and also liberating for you? And it really opens different portals to growth and awakening. We're going to get to do this with Monique Brignoni. She's a sacred pet death doula trainer and multi-sensory animal intuitive and soul coach. She's coming to us from Switzerland and taught a recent program with Shift that was really very well received and people loved her. So we're excited to have her back to explore this deeper understanding of the dying process and how that can be a liberation process as well. So Monique, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much, Stephen. I'm delighted to be here again. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, we're excited as well. And we're also excited that you have a brand new course coming up with Shift. It's called When Your Pet is Nearing the End. So we'll share more about that later in the program for folks who want to go further and really go deep. So,
Okay.
Monique, I'd love for you to share a little bit about your own journey into this realm and like why, particularly working with animals in the end stage, became such an important portal for you and for those that you're working with.
Mm. So honestly, I didn't really come into this work because I understood death or I liked it or I wanted to learn about it. I actually came into it because I didn't understand it. I shared the last time that when my cat Rami passed, I was in a place of deep grief. I remember that just after burying him, I was so overwhelmed, Stephen, that I actually wanted to dig him back up. And I still remember my friend at the time asking me, what about all the meditation that you're doing, right? And that's when I realized that there was something in me that really needed to change. And that grief propelled me into years of research because I really wanted to understand, where did that love go? Because let me tell you, although I did love Rami a lot, and I still do, in that moment, I could only feel grief and pain.
Mm.
And then, years later, when our Great Dane Daya was on her end of life journey, I actually received an incredible gift from her because so the vet came to see her and she suggested euthanasia. Now, not because she was in pain, but because she was a big dog. And also because her schedule was full. And she said, well, I don't know if I can come back later. And I remember thinking, I cannot end a love story on someone else's calendar, right?
Mm. Mm.
So as a family, we chose to wait. And then moment by moment, our little Daya began to move through the dying process in such like a linear way, very clear and linear way, which rarely happens, by the way, that my brain started to connect all of the dots with everything that I've been learning before. You know, the human death doula studies, the conscious dying experiences, the ancient traditions, and my own experiences with animals. And in that moment, everything was just coming together. Everything was connected. And I remember sitting next to her and I had all of my notes, right, from all of the different things that I'd been studying. And I would timidly say to my mom, okay, I think this is going to happen next. And it did. And I remember my mom even said, it seems Daya is reading your notes. But in reality, it was Daya that was showing me the map, right? And the beauty of all of this is that that I didn't know at the beginning where this journey was taking me, right? When I said, let's wait. But basically it took me step by step and we ended up having Daya take a final breath at home. And it was so peaceful that it indeed seemed as though she had died in her sleep.
Mm.
And we were all there sharing love. And so that was a big lesson from a very big dog. Yeah, and
That's a beautiful.
that was something, Stephen, that where where this work basically came together, and I realized that I had to do something with it, and I knew I could trust it and live it, and now I can share it. So yeah,
Mm. Well,
yeah,
it's a beautiful story, and there's something about a beautiful death that is just really the best
yeah.
way to end a life. And maybe
Oh yeah,
start with a little bit of insight into how we often bring our sort of this sort of desperate medical prolongation kind of mentality into the process with our animals, and that actually, if we shift that and kind of open to a more kind of natural, organic process, that
yeah.
maybe it's just helpful to understand like why that shifting our understanding and orienting not just around sort of prolonging life at any cost, but like
Yes.
embracing the journey really can shift things for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And this happens in human end of life as well. The thing is that one of the biggest shifts that happens when we understand the end of life process, the natural process, is that we stop seeing something as wrong, right? So usually in the medical system, which is right, that's their job to keep a being alive as much as possible, even if it's just for one more day, right? But then that closes us to that understanding. But biologically and let's say spiritually, dying is not a failure, right? It's a natural process. And in many ways, I always think about that it's not so different than birth. I remember watching a movie one day and thinking about this difference between birth and death. So I remember this woman was giving birth and she was in intense pain, and there was blood, and then the baby came out, obviously crying. And the thing was that everybody around her was calm, and they were even encouraging them, breathe and you're doing great, and you've probably seen that a lot, right? But no one thought that because of the pain and the blood and the crying, right? Nobody thought that that was something that went wrong, right? And if you think about it, it's like, wow, if that happened at the end of life, right, that would create an incredible panic, right? In fact, at the end of life, even just a small change makes us feel that something is going terribly wrong. And that's why there is this fight, I need to fight the disease. I need to fight this thing, right? So the difference is that although both birth and death follow that precise natural process, we know what happens at birth. And so we're not scared about it,
Hmm.
right? But with the dying process, we're going into the unknown. And that's when fear fills in the blanks. And suddenly we see pain and suffering everywhere. But what we don't often realize is that many of the signs that we are seeing are actually part of that natural way of transitioning. And of course, there is pain in illness. So we're not saying, there isn't any pain. And in these moments, medical support is needed. But the dying process itself, it has an intelligence to it. And the body knows how to do this. And dying is not painful. So the dying process itself is not painful.
Hmm.
And when we understand this, we can breathe again, right? And we don't immediately rush into panic. We can actually stay present. And that helped me to do, I did that with Dai, like I said before. And that helped me to see that there's so many meaningful things that happened. It's not just the physical, it's not just the body. There's so many things that are happening emotionally, mentally, energetically as well.
Hmm. Well,
So
let's dive into some of those, and maybe some that might be a little surprising to people too, in terms of like how there's just the natural unfolding.
yeah, sure, absolutely. So, like I was saying, we've been taught to look at the body, to focus only on the body at the end of life, right? And so, and that is a problem because there's so many other things that are unfolding in all other areas. And if we only focus on the body, which is the one that is actually getting weaker and weaker, then of course the experience is not on, right? Also, another thing, although symptoms that may happen in the end of life are similar to to younger animals that are not unwell, biologically and spiritually, there is a huge difference in an animal that is dying and an animal that is unwell, but is not dying. So, for example, let's say that an animal stops eating or becomes very still, or the breathing changes. What happens? We immediately worry, right? Because usually in a non-dying animal, we run to the vet because that would be the thing to do, right? But at the end of life, the body is letting go, is transitioning. And that means that the same signs can have completely different meaning. And it can even feel different because of the spiritual experience, right? So we need to understand how the energy is affecting the body. And anybody that knows about energy knows that when our energy expands, then we feel the body in a different way. So only looking at the body only gives us a little view on what is really happening. Some of the things that happen is like animals start turning inward, right? Or maybe they start staring at the wall, or they don't want to get up anymore, right? And a lot of pet parents call me and say, you know, my dog doesn't want to get up anymore, and they're not living well because they no longer want to do the things that they like to doing, and that to them that means that they're suffering. But in that moment, we're not considering what is happening energetically, right? Another one of those signs is a pet that stops eating, for example. So for us, that immediately feels like, oh, gosh, there's something wrong. They're suffering, they're in pain, they're not eating. But what is really interesting is how much that reaction comes from how we interpret what is happening. So maybe actually this would be a good moment to not just talk about it and to
Yeah,
actually
let's do a little
yeah,
experience around that. That
okay,
sounds great.
okay. Thank you, Stephen. So this is just a brief moment together. So you can close your eyes or you can keep them open as long as you just stay present to what I'm asking you to imagine. So I'd like to imagine that something very simple. Imagine that you're sitting with your animal friend and that your pet, your animal friend, hasn't eaten for a day or maybe even two. And you offer their favorite food and they turn their head away. And then you try again later and again later. But every time you try, they get up and move away. So just take a moment and notice what happens inside of you. What is the first thought that comes up? Maybe it's just there's something wrong. Maybe it's they're suffering. Or maybe you immediately feel like acting and doing something. Just notice how your body responds to that thought. And notice if you're feeling the tension anywhere in your body. For example, I would feel it in my stomach, a tightening, right? Or maybe you're feeling it in the chest, or maybe a sense of urgency or panic. Just observe it for a moment without trying to change it. Now imagine that yet another day goes by and your beloved is still not eating. And you've tried everything, but nothing. What are your thoughts now? Should I call the vet? Should I force feed? Now, let's stay in that moment. And your animal friend is still not eating, but now I would like to offer you a different context. What if this is not a body that is trying to recover? What if this is a body that is naturally beginning to shut down and let go? A body that refuses food because food is no longer necessary to keep life. So the organs that are responsible for digestion become weaker and maybe even shutting down. Now take a moment to imagine what would happen if this were true and they ate. How would they feel eating when their organs can no longer digest? The body has an intelligence and it knows what to do, and your animal friend knows how to trust that. Now just notice what happens inside of you. Does something soften even just slightly? Does that urgency to make them eat again shift? Does that urgency to force feed change? Because this is the difference, not in what is happening, but in how we understand what is happening. And from that understanding, what we do changes. So if you've had your eyes closed, you can gently come back to the present moment. And I would like to gently share that, when we begin to understand the difference between the body that is trying to survive and one that is preparing to close, we stop reacting to every change as an emergency. And we begin to stay present and read what's happening instead of fearing it, right? And imagining things. And that creates a space to stay present, to make conscious choices, which is what you said at the beginning of this conversation, Stephen, which I really loved. It is really about making more conscious choices.
Mm.
And then we know what to do because we understand what is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how we can truly support our animals in a way that is actually aligned with what their body is doing. I just want to share another little thing. I've seen so many loving pet parents rush to the vet in these very last moments out of fear. Maybe they saw their pet stare into the nothing or get worried because they took a loud breath, for example, right? And yes, Stephen, this is really scary. And of course, we want to rush to the vet. But then maybe their beloved animal companions pass in the car on their way to the vets or at the vets in a moment of overwhelm. And all of this, how it happens, can deeply affect the grief afterwards. And I know this because that's what happened to me with Rami. And how instead it was so different with Daya. But when we have a map, we understand how those moments can be our pet's last moments when the soul is leaving the body. And the thing is that the vet can't help us anymore in that moment, right? What helps us in those moments is a peaceful place to rest. But we need to know the difference. Yeah? We need to know the difference, whether it's a moment to run to the vet or stay home.
It seems that part of making peace with that reading things accurately is like that you're okay with or have some level of acceptance of the transition. If you're sort of resisting the death,
Yes.
then so maybe share a little bit about if you're kind of, oh, stop eating, that means that I have to really make peace with this is now moving into a death process and how to work with what emerges there.
Yes, absolutely. That is one of the biggest moments. But a lot of pet parents, they tell me, oh, I am telling my pet to leave, right? But then they're not ready because inside they're not accepting. And they're not accepting because it's so difficult to look at what they're going through. And if we are in fight or flight, we see everything again, like I mentioned, everything is pain and suffering, right? So it's really, how can we accept when our beloveds are not well, right? And we believe they're in pain. But when we understand the bigger picture, when we understand that they came to us with a mission, they came to us to help us in a certain moment in our lives, when we understand that the process that they're going through is natural and that Mother Nature at the very, very last moment switches off the pain signals because pain is no longer necessary because we're leaving the body, right? And so when we understand all of those things, then it's easier also to start accepting and letting go. Yeah. So yeah, everything always comes back to both the expanded awareness of how we see this journey unfolding and that this is not the end. Death is not the end, right? It's a continuation of consciousness. And just like we would like our sons to continue like college and go away and do all of the things, even though we don't want them to go away, but there's still that thing about, yeah, well, I wouldn't want to keep them at home forever, right? So when we understand this picture in a bigger way, but at the same time also understanding these natural processes so that we can make informed decisions, so we can really know what is happening. You know, the other day I had a woman come to me, and she told me that Fluffy died, and she was crying. And I honestly, from how she was crying, I thought that Fluffy had died yesterday. The thing was that Fluffy had died 10 years before Stephen. The poor woman had stayed with that energy for 10 years. And so we went through what had happened. And I was able, even from what she said, I was able to understand where in the process the dog was and what had happened. And I just realized that what she was saying as pain wasn't pain, right? It wasn't pain. And I told her the reasons for that. And I remember and her entire face changed, and that weight of 10 years lifted from her heart. And so this is the thing. It's like, you know, do we have to wait 10 years or can we live this during the end of life journey? Because it's not a day and a time, it's a journey, right? And when we can take each moment, each moment step by step without necessarily knowing what we're going to do, but just being present, connected, then life guides us. Our dogs, our cats, our animals guide us. The energies guide us in what to do. And then they also guide us in a completion that happens not only on the in the body, right? So not just the body that is closing down and completing this journey on earth, but also the mental side. We don't have that story rewind in our brains over and over again, because through this journey, the brain learns to understand what is happening. And that's why grief comes. And then by the time your pet dies, grief heals. And that doesn't mean that we're not sad, of course, right? But we're not like that woman in profound grief for 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Makes
So
sense.
there's so many completions that are happening when we're able to stay present with the unknown. And I'm sure you can appreciate this.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the human side of the equation, or human nervous system too, because there's a lot. I think the tendency is to sort of like get really focused on what's going on with our companion
Yes.
pet,
Yes.
but like our own sort of presence and awareness with our own nervous system has a big impact on the quality of the process. So maybe share a little bit more about that.
Absolutely, Stephen. You're completely right. And you know, they don't just respond to what we do, they respond to who we are. So energy is really important. And especially at the end of life, because all beings, so humans, animals, all beings become very more sensitive at the end of life, because they're expanding their energy to be more sensitive for where they're going, right? So imagine that we're in fear, in urgency, panic. Guess what they're feeling, right? And that can make it harder for them to settle in this natural process, because of course they love us and they want to stay with us, and they don't want us to be sad, and they don't want us to be nervous. Their mission has always been that of helping us, right? And so they're like, well, I'm not going if you're not well, right? So there's this energetic pull of, you know, home calling, and then there's this thing of I can't go now, right? And this is a thing, you know, right? We go to the vet, we get the terminal diagnosis, and obviously we get worried. It's normal, right? But our pets don't really understand why suddenly we're always worried and depressed, right? All of a sudden, we know that we've been to the vet and they told us something and now we are depressed. But they're like, they wake up one Tuesday morning and all of a sudden our energy is completely different. And because of the way the end of life is lived today, which is terminal diagnosis, and then you need to make a decision, otherwise you're not a compassionate, loving caretaker, then then you're worried about what's happening. You're worried about not being a good, compassionate, loving pet parent. You're worried about which decision to make. And what happens in this last moment, Stephen?
Mm.
This is the moment where we can have, where very well, in our spiritual practices, when we are present, when we are aware, we connect more deeply. We feel not only our energy, but we feel the energy of others around us. So of course we feel our pet. We know how our pets are feeling, right? And this completely changes how we live that, from that tunnel vision of, I don't know what to do. I need to make that decision. I'm worried and I can't feel anyone. I disconnect from the one being that I really want to be connected to, right? But when we go into that calm and stillness, because we know what's happening, then we can relax, and guess what? They can relax in their own process. And that's why this presence is so powerful.
That really
Yeah,
provides a much deeper understanding of why our own attunement leads to their natural attunement with their process as well. So
yeah,
it's beautiful.
yeah. Thank you.
So we've talked a little bit more about like not medicalizing things
Yeah.
that are natural. When do, is there discernment around when we should have medical intervention, not out of alarm or resistance, but just out of a sort of a natural caretaking impulse?
Okay, so this is actually an important question, because the reality is that I don't feel that it's about making a decision. It's not about choosing euthanasia or natural end of life, right? To me, it's about being present, conscious, so that we can make informed decisions. So that whatever decision we make, it doesn't come from fear. It comes from deep present connection with your pet, an understanding of the bigger vision. Now we can make an informed decision, right? Um, because every symptom feels like something that we need to stop normally when we're in fear, right? And in all of that stress, like I mentioned before, we lose that connection with our beloved animal friend. Whereas this is the moment that they're longing for this connection even more, right? And when we understand these stages of the dying process, then we can begin to recognize what belongs to the process, right, and what doesn't. And so instead of immediately asking, how can I stop this, how can I fix this, we begin to ask, what is this showing me? And that changes so much, right? Because these are absolutely moments that the connection really helps us with the afterwards as well, right? Because the more we're connected, the more our hearts are open, the more even when they cross over, we can keep that connection to the other side, right? Whereas if we are in that stress, then that can't happen. So it is really about it's not about responding, right? But like in reaction, sorry, that's what I meant. It's not about reaction. It's about really connecting to what is happening and then responding, right? Without that panic.
Mm,
Yeah.
beautiful. I want to ask about grief as well, because both the after the passing and there's a lot of anticipatory grief as well. And so, how
Yes.
to sort of your perspective on this? Can we sort of optimize? And so, a certain amount of grief it just seems like it's part of the process, but
Yeah.
that maybe we can talk about how to good grief in a way.
I love that. Good grief. Yeah. And it is good grief, because what happens is this: when we are walking this journey consciously, step by step, without, you know, just following what the energies are telling us, what our pets are telling us, what happens is that grief naturally comes, because grief is normal. It is part of the end of life process, right? So we are meant to experience grief. But the good thing is that we're experiencing grief, and let's imagine that you're crying and you're sad, right? And then your fluffy friend comes up and licks your tears dry, right? And then so you giggle a moment, and then you go back to sadness, and then your little one looks up to you like this with a goofy face, and then you make another smile. Or maybe, you look at them sleeping and you feel tenderness, right? What happens is that shift of constantly going, grief, sad, up, down, up, down, up, down, is a way that it prepares our nervous system, our brain, to understand what is happening. And then when that happens, by the end, when our pet takes the last breath, then there is no longer the grief has basically healed, right? So we live it. It's not that we don't live it, but by the end, especially if we're able to be aware of the wider perspective and the mission that our animals, came with, and we know what's happening, and we know they're not in pain, we know they're not suffering. I tell you, it just leaves us. You have no idea how many emails that I get, that says, I don't know, Fluffy, just as an example, Fluffy died yesterday and it was beautiful.
Mm.
And even I have a duck, I read them and I go like, oh, oh yes, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But like, no, that's a complete different shift from that, 10-year of grief to being able to be with that moment. And again, that doesn't mean that we shed tears, right? But that grief has healed. And as you know, in our spiritual practice, Stephen, no emotion is here to stay forever. No emotion, right? The problem with in this world about the end of life is that they say that grief equals love. So what happens? Even psychologically, what happens? The moment I'm in grief and the moment I start, maybe somebody says something funny and I just giggle a little bit. And then boom, I immediately think, I can't laugh. My pet has just died, right? Or I can't be happy. And we keep that grief. We hold on to it. Why? Because the society tells us that the grief is equal to the love that we've had. But for us that we know energy, we know that each of these emotions has a frequency, right? And so if you're in the high frequencies of love, it can't be equal to the frequencies of grief. It has another number. It's on a different radio channel, right? So it's the same thing that propelled me to study all of this, because although I loved Rami with all of my heart, there's no doubt about that, right? But what was I feeling? What was my energy exuding? Sadness, grief, like desperation. That's what I was exuding,
Mm.
right? So it is really important to understand this journey. And the more we understand it, the more we learn about it, the more we can actually stay present to it.
Mm. That
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Do you want to share more about the actual that final transition when the pet's soul leaves the body, and just any insights that come from a kind of a wider spiritual perspective on that?
Yeah, sure. So the things that I have seen the most and I've felt the most, even with people that don't go as deep as we could go, right? That we are on a spiritual journey, is that everybody feels like a peace if they're just present, right? Even if they're not spiritual, whatever, they feel a peace that is beyond what you can feel here. I always joke about, oh yeah, that peace, not the one I can get into meditation, because really it is beyond that. It's like a peace that is beyond this life. So that is often felt. And also the other thing that is felt is love. I have had an experience where I was driving back I was in my car, I was driving, there was a sad story on the radio, and I immediately started thinking about one of my cats that died, Tao. And, I immediately started to feel the tears. And then 1 second later, Stephen, I tell you, I was like engulfed with this love that is not here. It's like unconditional love, like 100%. And in that moment, I had to stop the car. And I always joke that I was having a love attack. I wasn't having a panic attack. I stopped
I
the
love
car because
that.
I was having a love attack. And this is not just something I felt. I often hear my students, my clients talk to me about, and then they tell me that thing. I was in deep desperation, then all of a sudden I felt this love, right? And so those are things that anybody can feel, right? It's not necessarily, I don't feel them all the time, but they can happen. And when they do, that's when we really know. We don't need anybody to tell us. We know it, full stop. And then also, like on the voyage, let's call it, as we know with humans, it's like the animals will want to stay a little bit more here to make sure that we're okay, right? So imagine the woman with 10 years of grief, right? Energetically, it could be that the animal Fluffy was actually like not going too far because of that, right? But what I have seen is that when we understand the journey, when we can allow them to let them go, what happens is we do have that connection. It's not that they've gone and we don't have that connection. We really do have that connection. And most of the time, not most of the time, sometimes they come back and become our guides.
Hmm.
Right. So the connection is changed, and it's up to us, Stephen, this is what I say, to learn how to change in order to feel connected. We can't just sit and go like, well, I can't connect and my life is horrible right now. It's up to us to make that change
Hmm.
because they've changed, frequencies. And if we do so, and that's why I always feel they help us to on our spiritual journey, because they make us want to go like, oh, I need to connect with my pet. And that's why, we learn animal communication, we learn healing work, and all of the things that you mentioned at the beginning of the
Hmm.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's really clear the way you talk about this. It really is just, it is such a spiritually evolutionary process to engage the dying process with your companion animal in this
Yes.
way. So it's like you're
Yes.
learning to be present, you're learning to make peace with the dying process, you're learning to communicate across the veil. There's so many levels of this that are really beautiful. So really,
Yeah.
it's a unique opportunity to put your practice into motion.
Absolutely. I always say that it's like taking the meditation cushion from the wherever you're meditating to into the real life, right? You're getting up from that cushion, and you're bringing your spiritual practice in one of the most challenging moments. But that is the difference, that is really like, can you do that? Because I was recently speaking to a very, very spiritual person, and she said, "Oh, I pray for the world. I do, all of these things." But then, when her dog was dying, she said, "Oh, I can't do that." She can't be spiritual then, right? And I was like, "Was this the same time, same thing? Just, do the same thing that you do before you pray for the world, right?" But yeah, this is needed, and I feel that this is a moment where you can use that opportunity to really make a huge shift in your spiritual journey as well. And that will help you to stay connected with your pet. So you also have a lot of benefits.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, Monique, you're just wonderfully empowering and uplifting in a subject that often is cloaked in a lot of fear. So it's really
Yes.
wonderful to be with you. So
No.
let's talk a bit more about your upcoming course, which is really a unique way to deepen this understanding and make it a practice that really liberates and heals and optimizes this whole transition. So Monique has agreed to teach this groundbreaking new course. It's called When Your Pet is Nearing the End. Understand the three stages of transition and make the best choices for you and your pet. So it spans from the practical to the deeply spiritual, and it's really going to give you a roadmap and understanding and tools and practices that help you make this transition beautiful. So,
Mhm.
Monique, I'd love for you to share some of your intentions for what people will come away with. And the URL, by the way, is at petpassingguide.com, petpassingguide.com. So share some of your intentions, and then we'll go through the modules and give a preview of what you'll be teaching.
Sure. Well, the intention is really simple. I just want to give the opportunity to people to understand this natural process of dying, and also the more spiritual side of dying. Because let's face it, dying is spiritual, right? And so we need spiritual tools. We've always managed the end of life with physical tools, vets, operations, and all of this. But the end of life, it requires different tools, right? I'm not saying those are wrong; they can work together, right? But if we don't use the tools, the spiritual tools, then there's a big part missing. So by understanding the biological process and by understanding these spiritual sides, then I can tell you that it completely changes how a person and an animal lives the end of life. And by the way, not only for their animal companions, but also facing our own death and also our human loved ones. It's the same exact thing. You know, I have many people that in my courses go like, "Oh, but that happened to my dad. Oh, yeah, you're right. Oh, but I wouldn't do that to my dad." Right? So it brings perspective into that, and it brings that more peaceful understanding and on how to face it. Yeah. It's not that we're going to be all happy about it. I'm not saying that. But when you embody it, you go, like I was sharing at the beginning that I wanted to dig Rami back up. And I was literally pulling my hair, honestly. I went from that uh, to this, right? That I can even smile about it. Of course, I'll cry when my pets die, but I can also feel that peace. Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. Module one, and it goes into the map of dying, moving from fear to love.
Hmm. Yeah, so in that first module, I give you a complete new orientation of the end of life process so that we can move from that feeling that everything is going wrong to understanding what is truly happening. And that helps us to, go into that sense of calm and trust more. Yeah.
Module two, the call, slowing down to act from clarity.
Yes, this is when we recognize that the journey is actually starting. But this is where, when we understand, right, we can stop acting from urgency and we understand that our pets are starting to slow down. And when we regulate our nervous system, then we can actually make those decisions out of clarity rather than fear.
Module three, the cocoon, recognizing withdrawal and becoming steady medicine.
Yes, I call it the cocoon and the call and all of that because I reference it to the metaphor of the of the cocoon and going inside where you don't see what is happening. Everything is happening invisibly, right? And so in this stage, your pet is begins to withdraw. In this module, we explore how to understand that shift. Yeah.
Module four, letting go, releasing with love so your pet can transition with ease.
Yes, we spoke a little bit about that before, and it's about the emotional and energetic layer of letting go, right? So that we can not hold on, and how our love can become not an attached love,
Hmm.
right? Yeah.
Module five, active dying, holding a sacred, peaceful space in the final moments.
Yeah. So active dying is where we explore what is happening in the final phase. And it's an intense moment. And usually this is where people rush to the vet. But this is actually the moment where the vet can't help you anymore. So it's important to learn to stay present and grounded and really know how to support your pet. Yeah.
Module six, guiding them home, a sacred map for supporting them in their final hours.
Yeah. And so this is just before the last breath and after the last breath, just before there's still consciousness release things that are changing, right? And so this is about learning how to recognize what your pet needs in those final hours as well.
And finally, module seven, beyond the last breath, integrating grief and keeping your bond alive.
Yeah. And in the last module, we move on to what happens after. So how we process that grief in a way that doesn't leave us stuck in pain, sorry, but allows us to stay connected, even to the other side.
Well, it's clearly going to be such a beneficial program and so beautiful to really engage in this way. And again, there's more detail at petpassingguide.com, petpassingguide.com. So a few other things about this program. So if you choose to move forward, you'll get the 7 90-minute live sessions that Monique just described, which have more detail on pet at the URL petpassingguide.com. That will give you time to do interactive practices together as well as do Q&A time in addition to the teachings she'll be sharing. And you'll get recordings of every session, both video and audio, if you need to miss a session or two. And you can also go back and do the practices again and really reconnect with the insights whenever you wish down the road. There's a word for word transcripts to study and highlight. There's weekly practices for home. There's a community to support you and deepen your experience, as well as small group time to connect with other participants. And on the page, you'll also see a number of extra bonuses, each of which is designed to enhance your journey. There's a PDF guide from Monique called End of Life Discernment Guide, Illness or Natural Transition. Want to share more about that?
Oh, yes. I can tell you how many hours it took for me to prepare that. I was like, oh, yeah, I'll just put these things, and it's 50 pages that guide us through the end of life symptoms. And so it's actually, I'm saying it seems a lot, but it's easy to go and look at the symptoms. And so you can see which stage it is, what to do, what happens energetically, and what happens physically, and what you can do.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's just bonus one. Then there's a second bonus that's called Pets as Divine Collaborators, the sole purpose of your relationship. There's a full video teaching going deeper into the spiritual dimensions. And Monique, I'd love you to share more about that bonus as well.
Yeah, this is how our animal friends are collaborate on our soul path. So, like I said before, they come, they have a mission, and when we understand that, then a lot of things change. And this perspective shifts the relationship, and it helps us to listen more with love and more consciously, right? Rather than just looking at things with the eyes.
Mm. Beautiful bonus as well. And then there's one final special bonus that you folks get if you sign up by midnight tonight Pacific time. This is a special bonus called A Letter from Your Dog, a guided heart transmission. And it's actually an AI generated video from Monique that helps with that heart transmission. So share more about what you created there and why that's a beautiful extra reason to sign up today.
Well, at the beginning, it wasn't AI. I edited it myself, and then I made a better one with AI. But basically, this just came to me one day, and I was crying whilst I was writing it. And even if I re-listen to it, I still cry. But basically, it's a story of an end-of-life journey through the dog's perspective. So yeah, get ready to cry.
Get ready to cry.
I know that's not like I don't want that bonus. No, promise you, it's really deep.
Oh, beautiful.
Yes,
Well, there's something about tears that are such healing and
yes,
healing blessings for us. So
yes.
thank you for that heartfelt extra bonus that folks get today. So it's clear it's going to be such a beautiful program, so valuable and practical. And we've kept the investment very accessible. It's just three payments of $128, or you save 10% when you pay in full with one payment of $349. The course is going to start May 14th and run Thursdays at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. But even if you can't make the live times, you can still get the full value with the recordings, the transcripts, and the community as well. So I also encourage you to read through some of the testimonials from Monique's previous course. People really love her as a teacher and feel so healed and uplifted by her work. So you are in very good hands, and you will get very uh, deep blessings if you choose to move forward and get it's all at petpassingguide.com. So Monique, it's been a wonderful time with you today. Anything you
Uh,
feel on your heart that you want to share for folks who are considering doing the full course on when your pet is nearing the end?
well, I can just say that that knowing everything that I share in this course completely changed how I live the end of life of my pets, and it's the same for my clients. It is a true game changer because it's a shift in paradigm, Stephen. It's not trying to heal after. It's about walking this journey consciously, connected to a natural process, and then we can always decide what to do. It's not anti-euthanasia. We can still decide what to do, but it's like walking this step a moment by moment consciously, and it completely changes how we live it and how our pets live it. So sometimes most of the times, the deepest wish is that our pets pass peacefully in their sleep.
Mm,
Here we become able to walk beside them, right? To be here, present, aware, connected. And so we don't have to just wait for that chance to happen, right? We can do something about it. And when we are present again, that keeps that bond alive into the beyond as well.
mm,
So yeah, that's
be-
my share.
Beautiful. Well, Monique, you're just such a blessing to be around and so
Mhm.
empowering and heart-centered and wise with this process. So thank you for what you've shared today. And thank you all for joining. And again, if you would like to go further with Monique's teaching and practices, you can do so at petpassingguide.com. And again, the name of the course is What to Do When Your Pet is Nearing the End. Understand the three stages of transition and make the best choices for you and your pet. And you will get that special bonus, the very heart-centered a letter from your dog, a guided heart transmission when you sign up by midnight tonight Pacific time.
Mm.
So thank you. And thank
Thank
you.
you so much, Stephen. Thank you so, so, so much.